Imagine while playing Mass Effect 1, 2, or 3 once, your friend turns to you and goes, "Man, I could do better than that," and with no experience in game development or any knowledge of what development was like for those games, Mass Effect Andromeda is what your friend would have created. Playing this game and thinking about how to write this video really changed my perspective on what I'm doing. I don't think it's right for me to be critical about games on an analytical level, because I have never made a game. If you aren't a game developer, you have no fathomable idea how games like Andromeda are made. I'm just a poor college student who's playing games in his free time, whose hobby is making videos. When I play a good game, I sit there like an idiot and go, "Man, I sure am having a good time," and don't think about what is running behind the scenes or analyzing why the developers chose to do what and how. I'm a consumer. I'm the player. I can only speak from a player's perspective. That's my perspective. I can't talk out of my ass about what BioWare should and shouldn't have done, because it's only easy for me to say it as it is for anyone on YouTube that reviews video games to say it. I didn't make any videos about Breath of the Wild because I was entranced in its world. I think it's cool how Link can glide, and weapons breaking is okay with me because I could just pick up another weapon. When I see difficulty options in a game, I don't pause the game and hit up my personal blog to write about it. When I finished Final Fantasy 15, I was speechless for days. I only talked with my friends because I felt it would help me articulate how I felt. When I finish a bad game or a mediocre game, it's usually at 3 in the morning, and I have a list running through my head of things that kept me from really feeling a satisfaction that I had described just a second ago. The only time I can start looking at something critical is when it isn't satisfying. I'm either not having fun or I'm not engaged in its world. Andromeda was something lacking fun and sometimes not engaging. Other times it was both. This game feels like they didn't know what made Mass Effect what it was. I feel they drastically improved on some stuff like combat and dialogue choices, but then took 20 steps back in the series progression with other options like the Nomad or the lack of meaningful choices. If you are familiar with the Mass Effect series, you are going to feel right at home with a lot of what Andromeda offers, but you are going to start noticing a lot of issues. So let's start things off and talk about the story. Mass Effect Andromeda starts before Mass Effect 3 begins. The Andromeda initiative is started by the Elusive Man, secretly, and your father is recruited for the project due to his AI. All of the species in the Milky Way set out on a 600-year journey to the Andromeda Galaxy in cryosleep, and with predetermined golden worlds to inhabit for their race. Sometime in those 600 years, the species known as the Remnant become active and make the planets unviable for living, and it's up to the human Pathfinder to make them viable and to stop another new species known as the Ket from harnessing the Remnant's power and the power of the special AI, Sam, invented by her father. So let's start with the writing. The writing is hit and miss constantly. Some bits are really good, but there's a good amount of cringeful lines that are just completely artificial sounding. This is an issue because Mass Effect was never known for having even a significant amount of bad lines. The writing to this game is also dating itself. What I mean is, in 5 to 6 years, this game's writing won't be memorable and will be disconnected. Why does writer literally say sigh? See, this is a big deal because this is a game about living in the future where no one says OMG anymore, and writing is able to be universal and not age and look worse over time. If you want proof, look at the first 3 games in this series as proof enough. I can show you a scene out of Mass Effect 1 now several years later, or even 10 more years later from now, and it will still be something that can be believed to be said and sounds natural. Let's talk dialogue choices. I'm glad Paragon and Renegade are gone. During every single conversation in this game, I was thinking on how I would personally respond and react to what was said to me as the Pathfinder, and poof, there was my response. Nothing arbitrary about blue or red, good or bad choices are here. This is a step in the right direction. A step back, however, is the lack of meaningful choices story-wise. Like, if you don't have the other Pathfinders saved, your captain dies. That's it. The open world. The open planets in this game feel as tacked on as they do in Metal Gear Solid 5. This game should have stayed to locations you pick, or at least an open fast travel option like what Watch Dogs 2 does. The characters. Alright. Andromeda brings out some of the best and worst things of the series. Drac is the best Krogan in the entire series. If you don't know who he is the oldest Krogan alive and is kept alive through several prosthetic limbs and surgeries. In the beginning of the game, he sends you emails with several attached images of guns to cheer you up about your dad dying. PB is the worst Asari character in the series, and possibly the worst character in general. Korra is admirable. She was an Asari commando, which is cool as hell. She stays really dedicated to following you as the Pathfinder. She mails you quotes from the Bible, and she does the most passionate thing with like starting a garden. Vetra is a really good follow-up to Garrus as that snarky Turian that you have on board. The rest of the cast, forget about him. Everyone else was just short of mediocre. The plot. I am sick and tired of dealing with this, the created and the creators, the synthetics versus the organics bullshit. It's cool when it's part of Sam and what Alec Ryder was building, like his character arc, but it's the entire plot, and we already did this before. There's a difference between tropes of Mass Effect and rehashing the same shit. Politics, that's a trope. The council with set interests that the player can defy, come the fuck on. But if you look deep into what the initiative is, it has connections to the Elusive Man, and it all really makes sense how everything connects back to the original trilogy in that regard, and I think that arc in general is really dope. The overall story falls flat because we've already done it. The set pieces. Yeah, so the best set pieces in the series are here, because Mass Effect wasn't really known for having them before. But there is a giant worm enemy you can find out there called the Architect. This thing is terrifying, and the fight with him is actually really cool. The fact that it comes back and you find it in orbit and then you fight it in different environments makes it the coolest boss in the series. When you enter the final mission room and the amazing music starts up, and the Architect is just there, not as the boss, but just fighting against you while you're trying to do other things. Oh, it's great. The chaoticness of that final mission is so good. And the part where you have to temporarily play as your sibling and you're suddenly stripped of all of your AI and all your weapons and you're just back to bare bones. You got one pistol and one grenade. The contrast is just so cool there. Missions. Missions are a chore. I beat the game. I have 90 to 100% viability on all the planets. I did loyalty missions for the characters I gave a shit about. I was invested in the plot of my dad and what he was up to and where my mom was. I have well over 50 missions left in the game, and there is no fathomable reason to give a shit about any of them. And if you need perspective, every single one of those missions has several steps to it, involves me going to several different planets and doing X or Y at them. And it's just, I put over 90 hours into Breath of the Wild or Final Fantasy 15. Those are great games with ridiculous amounts of side content. I put 30 hours into Andromeda. I'm not going back for anything I missed. Now these aren't just fetch quests, there's several part missions that are entirely voice acted and animated, and several of them most likely have choices that can impact further games. But this brings us to the elephant in the room and where my original concern for this game came from, that I haven't had to mention until now because it was not relevant until now, and that is the animation quality. There is far too much content in Mass Effect Andromeda. If anyone asks you how can you have too much content in a game, you point them towards this game. Bethesda games do this stupid infinite quest bullshit, and that's terrible. BioWare at least one-upped that with having this massive amount of missions that are all unique from each other. The amount of missions that are in this game would easily take you hundreds of hours to complete. I'm not a game designer, but I am an animator. This is why the game's animation is so mediocre. $4 million and 5 years of development time? Absolutely not enough for how much talking and animation is in this game. If you do not agree with me on that, then you have no perceivable idea exactly how much content is in this game through these missions. I'm not talking about the quality of the content, I'm literally talking about just the amount of it. And it's not excusing anything at all. Maybe it would be if the amount of content didn't affect how I played the game, but it was one of the worst parts of the game because it created horrible pacing issues. Now let's talk multiplayer. Multiplayer matches are peer-to-peer connections, and this isn't good for a really fundamental reason: the movement tech. The entire movement system of this game is the focus of combat, and it doesn't work in any sort of lag. So if there is a host that even has a mediocre connection, you are going to feel it interfere with what you want to do. The movement in this game is so ambitious, and really, this is the best combat in a Mass Effect game by leaps and bounds. But if you have to connect to a poor connection online, then the focus of the gameplay is just lost. Now, we should be really harsh on multiplayer, because according to BioWare, they canceled the multiplayer beta for this game because they felt it was good enough. I can only imagine that means the peer-to-peer netcode was flawless to them, so the flaws that are in multiplayer, I guess, are intentional? Traveling between systems. There is no excuse for how boring this is. I saw a video complain about getting into shrines in Breath of the Wild wasted a lot of time, and I really thought about that. But the difference between how bad this is and how bad the shrines were is that shrines were part of the gameplay and you're in them for a lot longer because, you know, you're playing in them. The galaxy map is just plotting on a map. There is no reason for it to not be convenient like how it was in the past games. If you asked for the galaxy map to be like how it is in Andromeda, you helped create a terrible problem. The way aliens stand. This isn't right. Why the fuck do Turians, Solarians, Krogans, and Angara not walk or do animations how they're supposed to? Why are they all leaning back? Am I the only one who sees this? This is the most unpolishing looking thing in this game, and it was so distracting more than any of the facial animation ever was. They're just not standing right. The music. A lot of the same melodies are reused from past games here. There is only one song in the game that has any sort of significance to it, and it is the very last mission's track. This really drives home what kind of direction this game could have been taken in, just from this huge deviation from the rest of the soundtrack. I wanted to find like a raw sample of the soundtrack, but guess what? This song itself, and songs that play during missions, are not on the official soundtrack. Why are there only 12 songs on the soundtrack? In conclusion, the game really feels like it wasn't made by the people who knew what Mass Effect was. I was glad to have another Mass Effect game to play, but now I can safely say, put this one below Mass Effect 3 and never waste my time again. There are so many fundamental flaws, even around the solid gameplay, and while these issues do come from being even more ambitious content-wise and gunplay-wise than past games, it causes the entire thing to fall flat. What made the first 3 games so ambitious were its characters, its storytelling and conversation system, and the strategic elements to its combat. If you like Andromeda, I can't fault you. I get why people would like it. I definitely felt I got my $60 worth of content out of it because of how long it kept me going, but god did it start to drag after about that halfway point. All I can say is, I hope BioWare does better next time.